The Goonies Never Say Die. This is a board game based on the beloved movies and designed by Prospero Hall, a studio of designers that have become famous for producing highly thematic games based on famous franchises and also for incorporating some of the ideas and mechanics and dynamics from hobby gaming into very digestible games that can also be attractive to casual gamers. And so I'll go on record in saying that I believe Prospero Hall are doing an amazing job at spreading the joy of hobby gaming in the general population because people pick up games based on Godzilla, The Goonies, Jaws, or Fast and Furious at large retail stores, and before they know it, they're playing hobby games. So thank you, Prospero Hall, for all that you're doing. Now, as for The Goonies Never Say Die, this is a game that I wish had been fully cooperative, just the topic lends itself to that, I believe, but that was not going to be. It is team-based. All players but one will control Goonies, or members of the famous Goonies squad, but one player will have to be the GM, the Goonies Master. GM, get it? And that player will control the environment, will control the monsters, will do all the stuff that in other games also GMs do. But with one important distinction, the GM in this game is an active player. The GM is actively trying to destroy the Goonies, not just to help them create a narrative. So either the GM will win and the Goonies will lose, or the Goonies will lose and will win and the GM will lose. So it is a team-based game, not fully cooperative. I played the game with my daughters that are currently 9 and 10, and also with my niece who is 7, and she was visiting last week. It was very sweet. And the game is totally playable by all of them. Then some of them also wanted to be the GM, and my 10-year-old did it without any problem. The 9 and the 7-year-old relatives, they needed some help, so after attempting in one case, didn't go so well, so they became assistant GMs. I told them that they were GM and I was the assistant, but you know how those things go. An important thing, the game is scenario-based. It comes with a range of scenarios that are described in the adventure guide, and I'm not going to show you any of them, not a single one at all, because even just a peek at the map will give you spoilers that I don't want you to have if you're planning to play as a player, not as the GM. But there are 9 scenarios, and you're thinking, wow, the movie wasn't that long. How can you create 9 situations based on that? Yes, and that your amazement, your surprise would be correct, because only the first 3 scenarios are based on the movie. The remaining 6 are based, it's like a fictional sequel in which, wait, but what if there was a second map? And what if there was a second treasure, the one I Willie had hidden in the caves? Maybe the first, what we see in the movie, just a ruse, a trick to cover, really to something. To misdirect people from the real treasure. So that's an interesting idea right there. Also, as I said, the GM plays against the players, actively trying to defeat them, but not all scenarios are equally balanced, in my opinion. I think it's incredibly hard to win as the GM in the scenarios based on the movie. The game becomes more of an actual competition between the GM and the Goonies in the sequel scenarios. So maybe, again, that was the idea. They wanted to you to experience a playable version of the game. There still was one in which was faithful to the movie, because the movie the Goonies win, and then the other ones become more of a variant in which the GM has a natural chance of winning. The general idea is this: the GM will use game effects to try to move tokens from the top of this timer to the bottom. How adorable is this? It has to be one of the most adorable things I've seen in all of gaming ever, well, at least in the last couple of years. If a turn starts and all the send tokens are at the bottom, the GM wins. If the Goonies are able to complete the objectives of the scenario before that happens, they win. One way of moving a send timer from the top to the bottom is to knock down a Goonie. Of course, everybody knows that means the Goonies killed, but the Goonies never say die, and they never die, so that means that after your Goonie has lost all of their life points, then the Goonie simply goes back to action, and hooray! Each Goonie is represented by a plastic miniature that goes on the board, and then we have, most important, a card or a placard with the information regarding, the stats that we need to play that character. And we really have all the iconic hero: Mikey, Mouse, Sloth, Chunk, Data. And each character has a number of health points. When you take a damage equal or higher than your current life, that is when you're knocked down. The GM gets a token, but you'll come back to life or come back to action later. Wishes, super important because they allow you to upgrade your dice. We'll see what that means. They also allow you to avoid incoming damage from monsters, from enemies. You simply discard one wish token for each damage that you want to avoid. Special abilities that different characters have. Mouth and Data actually have special cards to represent some of those abilities, but all the characters act differently and very thematically. And we love Sloth because he gets extra attacks, and who doesn't like extra attacks? And then there are 3 stats: Strength, Dexterity, and Search. As you can see, they're represented by dice. So you have these custom dice that are really cool. And simply, the red dice are the worst for the Goonies than, in general. The blue ones are a little bit better, and the green ones are the best ones. So Mouth is really good at dexterity, okay with strength, but not a great searcher. And characters operate differently. Sloth is a great fighter, plus the great abilities, but not very good at much else, and so on and so forth. So different characters will have different distribution of dice. You also see the symbols on the dice: bones and skulls. The bones are successes, always are. These are not successes. Also, every time a skull is rolled, the GM takes one of these tokens. These are GM tokens that the GM can spend to activate effects. So it can be bad. So again, these dice simply have more successes than these ones. Different distribution of symbols on the faces of the dice. As I said, the game is scenario based, and if you played HeroQuest back in the day, you know how it works. There's only one board, and it is not modular, although there are some templates that from time to time will be placed to change some of the rooms. But the scenario instructions will tell the master where our heroes start, and so the GM places a token there, and suppose that that's the starting place, so our friends start from there. Then the map for the scenario, which I'm not showing you, will show which areas of the board are activated. Different areas will be carved out from this board in different scenarios. So different rooms will be playable or not playable, connected differently. And so the GM will place on the board these tiles representing connections that are playable. So for example, in this scenario, which I'm totally making up, the Goonies start from here, and there are 2 areas that they can explore, and there is a token that is placed there as a reminder that those areas indeed haven't been explored yet. So each at the beginning, also I want to point out there's this really cool GM screen that is very thematic. The Goonies will look at the map the whole time, and the back also is an excellent reference of all of the information that you need to play the game, and the GM can also help the players by reminding them, okay, this is what you're going to do, and so on and so forth. At the beginning of each turn, there is a Goonies round followed by a GM round. During the beginning of the Goonies round, each Goonie gains a wish token, so that's automatic. That's really good. Then the Goonies will take their turn in any order. So you choose, okay, this turn I go first with Sloth, and then Chunk goes, and the following turn maybe we activate them in a different order. When you activate one of the Goonies, the Goonie can take 2 actions in any order, and you can repeat the same action A common action we're exploring, right, is going to be to move. So you simply move from one room to the next one. That counts as an action. If it's unexplored, then the GM will look at the instruction for the scenario and they will fill that room. For example, we discovered that that room has 2 more passages leading to unexplored places. I can't stress this enough. I'm totally making this up. But one of the passages is closed with a number of rabble tokens, and also the GM places there a pyrostash token. Maybe there's even a pile of bones tokens. Another action that can be taken is to search a stash or a pile of bones, in which case the character takes the dice that corresponding to their searching ability, and then you can upgrade them. Remember, you can spend a wish token basically to replace one of your dice with the better one. You can take your worst die in your pool and replace it with the next level up. So red with blue and blue with green. I spend another wish token, I can upgrade my next one, and I spend another wish token, and now I roll these 2. Another interesting thing is that if you have a friend in the same room, they can also spend wish tokens to give you dice, in which case they give you a die of the kind that they would use. So, for example, Chunk is there and decides to help Mouth, then Chunk spends a wish token and gives a blue die to Mouth to search. The idea is that in any case, no matter how many effects you have, you will always and only roll 3 dice, no more than 3 dice under any circumstance. Then you roll, each bone is a success. That was good because we totally rolled 3 successes, but we also rolled a skull, so the GM takes that. When you're searching a pile of bones or a stash, you will always find an item regardless of results. So you draw a card, and these will be things that you can use later. If you rolled at least 2 successes, you also find a treasure. And again, these are just really good items with different advantages. Pyrostashes are removed after they are searched. Piles of bones are flipped to the side with the exclamation mark. They cannot be searched again, but there may be other game effects related to them. Ooh, yes. Monsters will be on the board, or enemies, after a while. Another action you can do is to attack. To attack, you simply take your strength stat and you follow the same procedure that you follow for search. You take those dice, you can upgrade them with dice, you can receive dice from your friends. You roll the dice, each success is a point of damage that you inflict against an opponent, and you simply place the number of damage points there. When you equal or exceed the damage points of the enemy that you're attacking, the enemy is removed and you gain a wish because you feel very good about that. You can rest to collect a wish, and then there can be other action specific if you're using items represented on the cards. So, but these are really the main things. Most of the times what you will be doing as a Goonie is to move, search, fight, and again, spend wishes to give dice to other people, although that doesn't count as an action. It's still something you'll do very often. You will also need to spend actions and, again, possibly upgrade dice to remove these rubble tokens. Successes when you take a strength test will remove rubble tokens. But then it's time for the GM. Just like the Goonies gain wishes, the GM gains a GM token at the beginning of their turn. Then they get to activate all the monsters down the board. The activated monsters first will all move, and then they will all attack. There's no reason not to attack with your monsters. And when you attack, is the same thing. You simply look at the reference for the monster that you're using. You take those dice. The GM player spends GM tokens to upgrade the dice. Roll. Each bone is a hit that you're inflicting on the Goonie that you're attacking, and those hits can be removed by avoided by spending tokens. After the GM has activated their foes, it's time to play with the GM cards, which are super cool and super powerful. They look like this. and the GM player will draw one at the beginning of each turn. The GM can also play one for free during each GM turn. To play cards after the first one, the GM player needs to spend GM tokens. And so you simply do what the card says under the GM turn description. It is also possible that for the GM to play a card for the react value when the trigger described there is met. For example, after a Goonie takes a search action, then the GM player could play this react effect. After the Goonie moves through that passage, the GM could play that. So the GM is really mainly moving foes and attack with them and playing cards, and sometimes you don't have cards, you don't have the GM tokens to play them, but still, you don't have to snooze during the Goonies turn because you're waiting to see if you can trigger some of your react effects. And different scenarios will have different specific cards, just showing you that little label without showing you the actual card to preserve the surprise. But this is really the general idea. I want to point out that we also have the three teenagers that are following us. They're abstracted as these cards. You can use the help of a teenager to add the green die in one of the three specializations. Then you flip the card face up, face down, so you cannot use that until you rejuvenate the card. Then you will use game effects for that. But this is still the general idea. Players will alternate taking turns, the Goonies first, the GM next, performing their main actions and simply playing through the scenarios until either the Goonies had completed objectives of the scenario or the GM managed to place 4 sand tokens on the bottom side of this template. This is really fun. The Goonies Never Say Die was such a fun, enjoyable experience. I guess I was lucky enough to play it with some of the most fun players in the world. So lucky me, which was my kids and my niece, but in any case with very young players. And I don't know that the game would have had the same impact, would have been just as purely visually enjoyable if I played it with adult friends. Then there would have been min-maxing, perfect optimization of effects, etc, etc, etc. I think it was just fun to see these kids that really got into the story, into the adventure, into the excitement. So I definitely recommend this game first, foremost, and I'll say mainly for families, not necessarily for adults that are looking for a game that will shine at game nights with committed adult hobby players. But because also in that other context, there is the problem that some of the scenarios are really unbalanced, and they just, I can't imagine the GM player winning any of the first scenarios. It's just it just feels like you're there to facilitate the storytelling of the movie, and that's perfectly fine as long as you're aware of that and that's what you're expecting. That works, again, as an interactive storytelling activity. But when it comes to the later scenarios, then the challenge becomes tough and it becomes a lot more interesting. Production-wise, the game is very attractive to me. I like the way the board looks, like the cards, the placards, the little flavor text, the little touches here and there, the references. There is a statue on the back of the box. It's a fun reference to the movie. You know that scene. One thing though, there are some moments in which some of the components blend in with the board a little too much. So the board is very beautiful, very pretty, but those unexplored tokens that are just dark brown in there, sometimes it's easy to not to see them. You have to double check things. Some of those passages, again, I like it. Some of the components stood out a little more. It's easy, those passages that you place to connect rooms, to bump them, to hit them with dice. So again, I introduced my young players to the console dice tray because they kept knocking down components or just reaching out, and then all the tunnels were spread out. So pretty components. I wish there was a little more contrast when it comes to the stuff that actually physically goes on the board. But that's just a minor minor quibble there. Because other than that, gameplay is really enjoyable. The idea of basic dice that you can upgrade with your resources, variable powers, all the characters work in very thematic ways, very true to the movie, and also they offer you different gameplay options. The scenarios, the ones based on the movies, again, the play value is a little reduced. The what if, the sequel, so to speak, there is still a lot of theme. They still feel like, yeah, this could have been on Goonies too. This would work with all of these ghosts and giant monsters. I don't think it's a big spoiler that has it a little bit, but those are components you see in the box when you open it, so I think it's going to be fine for me to say that. So it's just fun to explore these what if adventures, these stories. So the game definitely feels thematic and gameplay wise. It feels very rich with a lot of interesting options for everybody. I would say especially for the Goonies. As the GM player, well, sometimes you're just piling up monsters on the Goonies, and sometimes the cards limit you in what you can do. I would say it's not maybe my favorite role, although it's the one that I did almost every single time. I don't think most people will find that to be the most enjoyable role. Although, when you win against the odds in some of the scenarios, or you barely win in some of the other scenarios, there's definitely satisfaction in that also. But just playing as the Goonies with the possibility of synergizing abilities, of teaming up. Hey, you come here, help you, you move the rubble, then I move to the passage that you cleared. Hey, can I borrow? Can you spend a wish to give me an extra die? That to me is the heart of the game. And another little nitpick is, well, I wish there was a way, indeed, to make the game fully cooperative. I think the game would shine even more and would become even more enjoyable if everybody can be the Goonie, and there was a way of automatizing the GM functions. I think maybe there will be an expansion. I hope that there will be an expansion of that kind, because I think that the game really, the quality of gameplay would just be elevated even further. As is, as long as somebody's willing to do the GM, which is a little bit of a strange role, then the game as is perfectly fun. And in a certain sense, it was also a way for me to introduce my daughters and even my young niece to something similar to a role-playing game, at least to the idea of playing with the GM, etc., etc., etc. So in general, the Goonies Never Say Die. It's a it's a game that really shows Prospero Hall's ability of turning a theme into a game that is so incredibly loyal to it. It really feels like a playable version of a source text, in this case the source text being the movie, and at the same time it's fun, it's enjoyable, and in this case here, a lot of replay value thanks to so many scenarios. I wish it was fully cooperative, and it ain't, but that's just a minor element here. But overall, there's a really nice package with a lot of play value there, because so many different stories, so many different adventures that you can experience. If you love the movie, I think it's a no-brainer. You should definitely give it a try. If you don't, I think it's still a fun game of cooperation, exploration, and unique and variable powers, unique abilities. Still a lot going on. Still a lot of fun to be had with this game.